She called me from the hospital parking structure on a Tuesday. Not the main entrance, not the lobby, not anywhere with the lights and people walking by. The third floor of the parking structure where it smells like exhaust and there is always a puddle near the elevator that never fully dries. I knew that parking structure. I had picked her up from that same spot dozens of times over the years, back when she was still in nursing school and her car was always breaking down. Mom. That was all she said at first. Just my name, the way she used to say it when she was 7 and had fallen off her bicycle. Not crying exactly. Something before crying. I was already reaching for my keys. She told me on the phone, short sentences like she was conserving air. My father-in-law had called her into his office that morning and handed her a termination letter. One paragraph. Her name spelled wrong. When she got home, or tried to get home, her key wouldn't work. She stood on the porch with the diaper bag on one shoulder and my granddaughter on her hip, and she knocked for 4 minutes before she accepted what the new lock meant. Her husband was not answering his phone. She had gone back to work. She had sat in a supply room on the 3rd floor for 20 minutes before someone asked if she was okay. She said yes. Then she called me. "Where's the baby?" I said. "With me. She's in the carrier." "Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming." I did not tell her I was smiling. She would not have understood that yet. My daughter Vera is 31 years old. She has her father's stubbornness and my instinct for numbers, which is the combination that got her through nursing school in 3.5 years while working weekend shifts at a diner. When she married her husband 4 years ago, I sat in the front pew in a blue dress and I smiled at all the right moments. His name is Derek. His father's name is Gordon. Gordon owns, or believed he owned, 3 outpatient physical therapy clinics in the metro area, clinics that had been expanding steadily since Derek and Vera married. Gordon had a habit of introducing himself as the owner and founder at every Chamber of Commerce event and every neighborhood association meeting and every dinner party where anyone would listen. He wore that title the way some men wear a watch, constantly, conspicuously, as though they need you to notice it. What Gordon did not advertise and apparently did not fully understand was the structure underneath his operation. I am not a dramatic person. I don't make speeches. I don't issue ultimatums over dinner. I spent 34 years as a commercial real estate broker, and before that, I spent 6 years working for a property management firm in Cincinnati that taught me everything about what it means to hold a lease versus what it means to think you hold a lease. I retired 3 years ago. I have a vegetable garden in the backyard and a cat named Biscuit and a financial portfolio that my son-in-law assumed was a modest retirement account. There is a particular kind of man who looks at a woman my age and sees a pleasant hobby. Garden clubs, church groups, maybe some light watercolors. Gordon was that kind of man. So was Derek, which I had suspected for a while and was now confirmed. I pulled into the parking structure and took the ramp up to the 3rd level. Vera was standing near the elevator with my granddaughter, 19 months old, bright-eyed, completely unbothered, strapped to her chest in a blue carrier. Vera had one bag at her feet. Just one. The kind of overnight bag you pack when you are not thinking about logistics, when your only goal is to get yourself and your child out of a situation. I got out of the car before the engine finished cooling. I hugged my daughter. I took the bag. I unclipped my granddaughter from the carrier and buckled her into the car seat I keep in my back seat, which some people have called excessive, and I have always called practical. Vera got in the passenger seat. She stared straight ahead. We drove for 6 minutes in silence. Then Vera said, "I don't understand what happened." "I know. We were fine last week. Nothing was wrong. Gordon just called me in and..." "I know." Derek won't answer. "Vera." I kept my eyes on the road. "Do you trust me?" She looked at me. "Yes." "Then let me work for a few days. You and the baby stay with me. Don't call Derek yet. Don't call Gordon. Don't post anything. Don't text anything to anyone in that family." She was quiet. "What are you going to do?" I turned onto the highway. What I've always done. That night after Vera and the baby were asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my reading glasses and a cup of tea, and I opened the file I had been quietly maintaining for 14 months. I want to explain something because people always ask why, how, when did I start to notice? The answer is not dramatic. It began with a phone bill. Vera mentioned offhand about a year into the marriage that Derek had put a second line on her account for work, he said, because Gordon's clinic used a particular system and it was easier that way. Something about that phrasing bothered me. I didn't say anything. I just started paying closer attention. Over the next year, I noticed small things. A credit card statement forwarded to the wrong address that Vera mentioned dismissively. A loan application she had co-signed that she seemed vague about the details of. A conversation at Thanksgiving where Gordon referred to our assets in a way that included things that were not his. I noticed all of these things and I wrote them down, not because I expected to need them, but because I spent 34 years in commercial real estate and I have never once regretted writing something down. 3 months ago, I had called in a favor from an old colleague who runs a title and escrow firm. He was not doing anything improper. I simply asked him to help me understand something about a property I was curious about, and he told me what public records contained, which is information anyone could find if they knew where to look and what the documents meant. What I found was this. The 3 clinics that Gordon operated were housed in commercial spaces. 2 of them were leased from a property management company. The 3rd was in a building that had changed hands 4 years ago, sold by the previous owner and purchased by. And here is where I had to read the document 3 times. A holding company whose registered agent was my daughter's name. Vera's name. My daughter had signed closing documents on a commercial property 4 years ago. She had no memory of doing so. I knew this because I had asked her carefully about 6 weeks after I found the record. I told her I was updating my own estate documents and wanted to understand what assets she had in her name. She listed her savings account, her car, and her retirement fund from the hospital. She did not mention a commercial property because she did not know she owned one, which meant someone had used her signature. I did not tell her any of this while I was building my file. I am her mother, not her therapist, and I made a decision early on that the most useful thing I could do was gather the complete picture before I showed her anything. Partial information creates panic. Complete information creates options. When I finished reviewing my notes that night, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, who has been handling my business and personal affairs for 22 years. The second was to the property management company that held the master leases on the first 2 clinic locations. I knew the firm well, had referred clients to them for years. The third call was to the company that managed the building Vera technically owned. I left messages for the property management company and the building manager. My attorney picked up on the second ring. I may have a situation, I said. Tell me, she said. I told her. The line was quiet for a moment. Then, do you want to move quickly or carefully? Both, I said, but carefully first. By Thursday, I had what I needed. Vera's signature on the closing documents for the commercial property matched a notarized signature on a bank form from the same month, a form that had been signed, according to the notary stamp, at a UPS store in a suburb 40 minutes from where Vera lived and worked. Vera had never been to that suburb. I knew this because she had mentioned once that she had never driven that far east since the highway construction made it miserable, and because her phone's location history, which she had shared with me 2 years ago for a road trip we took together, did not show that address. The credit card accounts were clear. 3 of them opened in the space of 8 months, using Vera's social security number and her maiden name, which she had not used since the wedding, with statements going to a P.O. box she had never opened. The balances totaled just under $60,000. The building that Vera owned carried a mortgage in her name for slightly under $400,000. My attorney filed the initial paperwork on Friday morning. We also sent a formal notice to Gordon's operating company advising that the leases on 2 of his 3 clinic locations were under review and that a default notice was pending due to irregularities in the lease agreements. The 3rd location, the one in the building bearing Vera's forged signature, was a different matter and was being referred to the district attorney's office along with our documentation. I did not attend any confrontation. I did not call Gordon. I did not call Derek. I did not show up at the clinics. There is a version of this story where I walk into someone's office and make a speech, and everyone in the room finally understands who I am. That is not my version. My version is a certified letter. My version is a phone call from a very calm attorney to a very suddenly panicked man who had been presenting himself as a business owner for 4 years and was now learning, at 62 years old, that the ground under his feet had never been his. Vera was sitting at my kitchen table when I told her. I showed her the documents in order, the property closing, the credit accounts, the mortgage, the notary stamps. I watched her face as she moved through each page. She is not a person who cries easily, again, her father's stubbornness, but her hands were shaking by the 4th page. He used my social security number, she said. Yes. He opened credit cards in my name. Yes, Gordon did, with Derek's knowledge at minimum, possibly his involvement. And the building is legally in your name, which is a problem for you and also for them, given how they got your signature on those documents. She set the papers down. She looked at the window for a long time. Outside, the bird feeder I had hung last spring was swinging slightly in the wind. My granddaughter was in the living room, stacking foam blocks with great seriousness. Mom, Vera said finally, how long have you known? 14 months, roughly. Not all of it. I knew enough to know something was wrong. I waited until I understood the shape of it. Why didn't you tell me? I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. Because you were pregnant for part of that time, and because I needed to understand it completely before I showed it to you. Partial information would have sent you back to Derek to ask questions, and he would have had answers, and you might have believed them. She was quiet. You have options now, I said. That's why I waited, so you would have options. Gordon called me on Saturday. I don't know how he got my number, though I suppose a man in his position has ways. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was 7 minutes long. I saved the recording and sent it to my attorney. Derek called Vera. She did not answer. He texted 17 times over the weekend. She read each one and did not respond. I did not tell her not to. That was her choice, and she made it quietly and with her jaw set in a way that reminded me of myself at 31, which is when I was finalizing my broker's license and my first husband was telling me it was too much work and I wouldn't last. I lasted. The default notices on the 2 clinic leases were processed the following week. Gordon's operating company had 60 days to cure the defaults under the lease terms. The irregularities we had identified, including an improper assignment clause that had been buried in a lease addendum 3 years ago without proper authorization, gave my attorney a strong position. We were not trying to destroy a business in 60 days. We were establishing clearly and legally that the business rested on terms Gordon did not actually control. He came to understand this. The referral to the district attorney moved at the pace such things move, which is not fast, but it moved. My attorney had structured our submission carefully, which is to say that it was organized and documented and contained no editorializing and would be very difficult to dismiss. The credit card companies were cooperative once Vera submitted the fraud documentation. The process took weeks and was tedious and required phone calls I could hear her making from the guest room late at night, patient and precise, the same voice she uses with difficult patients. It will take time to fully unwind. These things always do. But it will unwind. I want to say something about Derek because people always want to know about Derek. I believe Derek is the kind of person who does not make explicit decisions so much as he allows things to happen. He did not march into a notary's office and forge his wife's signature. He knew it was happening. He signed documents that his father prepared. He opened a P.O. box. He said nothing when his wife's name appeared on accounts she had never opened. He changed the locks on his own house when his wife was at work because his father told him the business needed a restructuring and it was cleaner this way. That is still a choice. Choosing not to stop something is a choice. Vera understands this. I watched her come to understand it over the 3 weeks she stayed in my guest room, and I did not rush her or editorialize. I made dinner. I washed the baby. I gave her the Wi-Fi password and a set of keys. On the 22nd day, she came downstairs in the morning with her laptop open and said, "I called the nursing school about the nurse practitioner program. I had enough credits to waive 2 prerequisites. I can start in the fall." I poured her a cup of coffee. "How do you feel about that?" "Scared," she said, "also like it's the right thing." "Those two feelings usually show up together when you're making a real decision," I said. She laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh in 3 weeks. It sounded like something coming back. The week before Vera found her own apartment, a 2-bedroom, 2nd floor, natural light, 6 minutes from my house, she asked me something while we were folding laundry together in the living room. "Mom, did you know when you smiled in the parking structure? Did you know then that you could fix it?" I thought about that. I thought about the file I had been building for 14 months. I thought about the lease documents and the certified letters and the Saturday voicemail I had saved as evidence. "I knew I had been preparing," I said. "I didn't know it would go the way it went. I just knew I wasn't going to let you face it alone." She folded a small pair of pajamas, my granddaughter's, the ones with the elephants on the feet, and she set them on the pile. "I want to be like that," she said. "I want to be the kind of person who prepares." "You already are," I said. "You just haven't had the chance to find out yet." My granddaughter is walking now, full and confident, into every room like she owns it. She is 22 months old, and she has strong opinions about which cup she uses and which book gets read at bedtime and which direction she wants to walk in the park. I take her on Tuesdays and Thursdays while Vera is at the hospital. We go to the park. We look at the ducks. She points at everything, and I tell her what it is, and she repeats the word back to me with tremendous satisfaction, as though she has personally invented the concept. Biscuit the cat has made his peace with her. This is more than I expected. Vera's apartment has a little balcony where she grows herbs in pots: basil, parsley, one very determined rosemary that survived last November against all odds. She calls me on the drive home from her shifts, and we talk about ordinary things: what the baby did, what's in the news, whether she should repote the rosemary. Sometimes we talk about the case because it is ongoing and there are updates, but less often now. Less often every month. She starts the nurse practitioner program in September. She has already ordered her textbooks. She keeps them stacked on the kitchen counter, and sometimes when I visit, I see her reading at the table after the baby is asleep, one hand around a mug, the apartment quiet, the lamplight warm. She looks like someone who has decided something. Gordon's first clinic closed in February. The other 2 are limping. I don't track it closely. I don't need to. I have my garden. I have my cat. I have my Tuesday and Thursday mornings with a small person who finds ducks absolutely extraordinary. I have my daughter back. Some things you build slowly, deliberately, without anyone watching. You build them before you know exactly what they're for. And then one Tuesday afternoon, your phone rings in your kitchen and you reach for your keys and you think quietly, without drama, "I built this for right now." That is enough. That has always been enough. I have been thinking lately about what it actually means to protect someone. Not the dramatic version, not swooping in at the last moment, not making speeches, not being the loudest person in the room. I mean the quiet version, the kind that requires you to pay attention for months before anything goes wrong. The kind that most people never see because it happens in kitchens at midnight with reading glasses and a cup of tea that goes cold before you finish. Gordon and Derek did not lose everything because I was angry. They lost everything because they built on ground they didn't own and they never thought to check. That's not a punishment I handed down. That's just how things work. What you build on borrowed assumptions, on other people's names, on signatures you obtained dishonestly, none of that holds. It can't. Not permanently. The structure looks solid right up until the moment it doesn't. I think about Vera the night I showed her the documents, the way her hands shook, the way she went very still when she understood the shape of what had been done to her. She didn't ask why they did it. She already knew why. People who take shortcuts take them because they believe other people won't notice, or won't act, or won't have the tools to respond. They counted on her being too young, too trusting, too busy with a new baby to look closely at paperwork. They were right about all of that. They just didn't account for me. That's the thing I want to say, if I can say it without it sounding like a warning or a lesson, because I don't mean it that way. I mean it as plainly as I can. The people who tried to use Vera chose her specifically because they thought she was unprotected. And what I want for her now, more than anything, is not that she needs me to protect her forever. It's that she becomes someone who can't be chosen for that reason. Someone who reads her own documents. Someone who keeps her own records. Someone who knows what she owns and what she is signed and what her name is attached to. She is getting there. The nursing program, the apartment, the rosemary on the balcony she refuses to let die, these are not small things. These are a person deciding, one ordinary Tuesday at a time, what kind of life she is building and on what kind of ground. What stayed with me after everything settled was something simple. The people who wronged her did not lack intelligence. Derek is not stupid. Gordon ran 3 clinics for years. What they lacked was something that doesn't show up on a resume or a business license, the willingness to do right by someone even when they could get away with doing otherwise. That's not a legal category. There's no document that measures it. But it is the thing that everything else rests on. Quietly, the way a foundation sits under a house. You don't notice it until it's gone. Vera already has it. She always did. I watched her sit with my granddaughter during all of this. Patient, steady, reading the same board book for the 15th night in a row. And I thought, whatever was taken from her, they couldn't take that. That part was always hers. You can't forge a signature on it. You can't open an account in its name. It just is, or it isn't, and in her it is. That's the only inheritance I ever really wanted to pass along.